You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Business owners and Americans are constantly pursuing the American dream, but sometimes that can get shattered because we don't understand the complexities of the tax and legal system here. With me today is Roger Pearson with Seagull Technologies, who has tons of courses and free information available to help business owners navigate that entire landscape, in addition to consulting. And we want to talk with him today to understand better how we as business owners and entrepreneurs can better position ourselves so that we're not going to jail or getting into any legal trouble with taxes and paperwork and all that fun stuff. Roger, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So excited to have you here. Roger, can you tell me more about just your past work experience and how that kind of brought you into what you're doing today?
Well, it's been a long road because being in my 70s, I've been in the workforce for over 50 years. And what brought me to, I've owned a lot of my own businesses. I've always been in the business world, and I've been hard an entrepreneur, tried and true, and starting with a paper route in my teens, So I tried a lot of businesses that I didn't like, so I got rid of them. I did landscaping company for a while and decided I didn't like working out in 103-degree temperature. That just wasn't for me. And I tried a custodial company once, and it made money, but I decided I didn't like employees because they'd call up and not show up for work, or just not show up for work. And I said, no, that's not for me. And then in the 90s, I went back into the corporate world. Okay. So, I'm a pretty good manager. And 90s was the decade of downsizing. All these corporations were downsizing. And in 10 years' time, I was downsized on a 3 corporation, and I was doing like software support for IBM and all kinds of things because I'm an early computer adapter. I started out in the 89 when Windows wasn't even invented yet. So that's how far that I go. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I don't really want to go back in the corporate world and get back up to a nice management position and be downsized again when new management comes in. So my sister-in-law said, well, why don't you go take this tax course? It'd give you some part-time work to do and until you figure out what you want to do. And so I did, and I tried it out for the first season. I found I loved doing it, especially when I got to deal with small business people and people that are into real estate, landlords, and all of that stuff. I found I really liked it because I could draw on all of my personal experience in business. And then all of the knowledge that I gained with the IRS tax laws to really, really help people. And I've helped hundreds of people over the last 2 decades. So it's amazing because I'm up to where I help about over 500 clients a year now. Not all of them are businesses, but a lot of them are. And I really get an enjoyment out of teaching because when I went to college, I wanted to be a teacher. And then I saw what the public education system consisted of. And I said, I'd be fired every year if I was going into there because they tell you what to teach, how to teach, and micromanage you, and not to mention the paperwork. And I said, I can't teach that way. So I've taught in the corporate world all these years. And so what I've gotten into now is I get my love of teaching and my love of creativity. And the creativity comes from the computer background where I'm developing online courses and educational courses and things. To try to reach out to the people that, don't sit in front of me every day. I can help more people in the world, basically, is where I'm going with all of this. So it's been quite a road. It really has. And the fact that I'm going into my 22nd season doing taxes for people just amazes me because usually I never lasted more than 3 years anywhere.
Isn't that incredible just how our journey kind of finds itself along something that was supposed to be a part-time, let me just give it a shot, turns into your passion. This is you wanting to educate people about this system. You ended up loving it. The people that you help. It's just incredible.
It really, really has when I look back at the whole thing. It really has.
That's incredible. Well, I'm so excited to be able to pick your brain a bit, to understand taxes. And it's one of those dark gray areas that we don't fully understand, at least me personally. Now, you can still be successful to some extent, but why wouldn't you want to keep more money into your own pockets and keep things on the up and up just to make sure that things are nice and easy for everyone? But can you kind of take me through what the format looked like for legal entities, or is it the structure of the paperwork? I suppose, what is the foundation as far as like when a business first starts or how they incorporate? How does that all work?
One of the big problems I've seen in this country is that our education system has really kind of failed us. We don't teach how to be an entrepreneur in college. I mean, when I was in high school, the big thing was the trades. And of course, you had, all the things for fixing cars or carpentry and all of that stuff. But you really had nothing, and you still don't to this day, for the most part, have anything in our educational system that teaches people how to be an entrepreneur. Now, I'm seeing there's a few colleges around the country that are starting to teach this, which is very good. And a few community colleges starting to teach this, but it really is not, it needs to be taught at the high school level, because I don't think a lot of people realize that small businesses are the backbone of our economy. I mean, we hear about all these corporations and everything, that's all the news talks about. But when it comes down to it, it's the mom and pop businesses that make this country what it is. We need to be teaching how that is. And that's what my mission is, to get that information into the hands of people. So there's a lot of people that say, well, I'll just hire somebody to do it for me. Okay. And people don't realize how many mistakes that I catch from people that have, their accountant is retired and they want to find a new one, or they were happy with their tax repair and they want to find a new one. But the amount of mistakes that I get every single year are tremendous, because people don't realize that when you go and hire an accountant or CPA, or you go hire a tax person to do your taxes for you, you need to interview these people, just like you would interview an employee. I mean, if you had a plumbing company, you just wouldn't hire anybody off the street. You'd interview them to see if they knew anything about plumbing. And the same is true in hiring people that help manage your money stream. It's even more important, actually, in that case. And so the things that you need to be interviewing is, there's three basic aspects of building a solid foundation on your business. The first one is knowing what the different legal formats are. For instance, most people start out as a sole proprietorship, or if they're going into business with somebody, a partnership, or there's certain trades that certain states require you to be a corporation or an S corporation to do business in the state. Like Florida, if you're in the contracting business, painters or so forth, you have to be a corporation. That's just one of the state laws, and every state is different. We have 50 states. We have 50 different sets of laws to keep track of. And the second thing is, how do you organize your paperwork? I mean, I still have the people that throw it all in a block. I have the people that, well, my checking account is my bookkeeping. And oh my God, that doesn't work. That doesn't work, because if you go into an audit with that, this purchase you made at Walmart, they don't know if it's personal. They don't know what's business, and they will disallow it if they can't prove it's business. So you need to know how to organize your paperwork so that the people you can hire, whether yourself or somebody else, has the information they need to properly help you. And the third is, you need to know what the basic tax laws are for each of the legal formats. Okay. And what the advantage of one. Now, a lot of people, they'll start as a sole proprietor just to see if their concept works, and see if they like that type of business and so forth. Some people are sole proprietors and they don't know it, because they get one of these Uber jobs and they don't tell them, well, you're in business now and you're responsible for all your own Social Security and everything else. And that's a shame. But those three things, it's like three pillars. So you have your legal formats, you have your organization on your paperwork, and you have your tax knowledge. So when you go in and to hire somebody, you need to sit down and you need to drill this person, say, with those three. And how can you interview them unless you learn them yourself? And that's the big problem, because we don't have the education system that teach you, which is what all of my courses and everything are all about, to teach you this. So if you're doing it yourself, or if you're hiring it out, you know how to properly find the person that's going to do it. One of the things that I see so much, especially in CPA firms, and I'm not down on CPA firms per se, but one of the questions you could ask, like if you're interviewing an accountant or CPA, especially a CPA, how many continuing education hours do you take a year are on taxes? Because the great majority are none, and you don't want that. You want a CPA that takes tax classes every year to keep themselves up on the latest, because that's one of your core principles that you need to run your business. Okay. The same, and don't get one of these people that say, well, just to drop it off, I'll call you when it's done. And that happens a lot. And walk away as fast as you can if you have somebody like that. But learn that stuff so that you can interview these people so you can hire the right people. Because if you hire the right people, they're going to save you many times over what their cost is. Believe me, they will, by applying, It's just like the tax force. On the tax force, and people say, oh, they think it's just a numbers thing, right? And quite frankly, I couldn't think of anything more boring in the world than to be an accountant and just look at numbers day in and day out. And they say, well, isn't that what taxes are? I say, no, taxes are laws. How do you use the IRS laws against the IRS to help your client? This is the type of tax preparer that you want to find, because they can do remarkable things. They should be talking, if you have to buy products and equipment and things, they should be talking to you about depreciation. How do you want to handle? There's a dozen different ways to handle depreciation, whether you want to use it this year, whether you want to shove it into next year when you have more profit, that you need the deductions again, and so forth. These are the discussions that your tax preparer should be having with. And unfortunately, that's a minority rather than the majority. Okay. So these are all the things I see and help people with.
That's fantastic. Two of the pillars that you mentioned that I find are so important for, kind of like managing your business and taking it to the next level. One is the education. You need to have the resources available to help understand it. Two, the tools. You mentioned someone dropping off a shoebox full of their receipts and invoices, and here you go. But again, the follow-up questions, what are the questions that your accountant, your tax preparer are asking you? Because those intricacies are so valuable into navigating it, but also to saving you money. And that's, as a business, that's what we're trying to do. So I really appreciate that, those two specific things, but you're also willing to take the IRS on with their own laws and use that against them. Why wouldn't you want to leverage that? It's brilliant. I love it.
Well, it's what the large corporations do. That's why you hear these corporations make all this money, then pay little taxes, because they have accountants and tax professionals that know all the rules and know how to use them for their client, And the same thing, there's not as many business credits and everything for a small businessman, but they are still, the major ones are still there. Why not use them the same way that large corporations do to minimize your tax? Because the government sure doesn't know how to spend it properly. Why give it to them?
I agree. Absolutely. We have to empower these small business owners to have the same resources, tools, technology that these big corporations do, because they're utilizing it. We need to use it as well. So that way we're on a similar level playing field. It's never going to be equal, but something we can do to make it a little bit better is important. And you mentioned that you do service all 50 states because the laws can be, there's differences between each state that you go to. So Seagull Technologies does serve all 50 states. Is that correct? Or is it just limited?
Actually, through the company, I work for a major tax preparer during the tax season. Okay. And I apply for 7 states, South Korea and Italy, that I do virtually. So yeah. So I have to pretty well know the laws of all of them. And there's certain states like New York and Oregon now, you have to actually be certified in those states as well.
Oh, wow. That's so fascinating. Now, when a business owner is working with an accountant or a tax preparer, how often should they be meeting? Is this a once a year just before taxes are due? Is this quarterly? What's the ideal structure?
It's for a small businessman, and a small business I usually refer to as less than $250,000 a year in revenue. Okay. Those are generally the people that need the most help. And you don't necessarily have to meet quarterly. You should be reviewing your profit and loss statement a minimum of quarterly, but you should be sitting down with your tax preparer in like November, because a lot of people don't realize that the law requires that you prepay at least 90% of what tax you're going to owe that year, or you're going to be penalized. So if you need to send in a little more estimated taxes, don't wait till February to find out. You need to be knowing that in November. And so you can say, okay, what's my taxes going to look like coming up for the year? Do I need to make any more estimated payments to cover the taxes so I don't penalize, and that type of thing? As far as reviewing your profit and loss, a good businessman knows what their net profit is on any day of the year. They don't wait till the next March to find out if they made any money or not. And the basic reason for that is not so much a money thing. It's just, especially when you're starting out, if something's not working, you need to be nimble enough that you can take a 90-degree turn or a 180-degree turn and try something else. If you wait till the end of the year to find out if it worked or not, it's too late. You've lost money. But if going in 3, 4, 5 months, you're looking at your P&L and say, hey, I'm spending more than I'm making here. Something's wrong. I need to make adjustments right here so that I'm not in trouble at the end of the year. So that's vitally important too. So as far as that, when you're starting out, it's probably not a bad idea to sit down quarterly with your accountant, if you have one, or yourself, if you're your own accountant, and take a look at your expenditures and your income to see if there's anything that you can improve going forward. And if you do that every quarter, then by the end of the year, you're not going to get a nasty surprise. You're going to know exactly where you're sitting, and you're going to be able to make the adjustment so that you're not losing any more money than you would have to, especially getting started. And the first year, I mean, having a loss the first year is nothing new. That happens. It usually takes 3 years before most business get into really profitability. But the more that you do your review, the less likelihood that when you get to that 3-year mark, you're not making money.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest challenges going from a traditional W-2 employee and then into sole proprietorship or starting a business is just that difference in the checks that are coming to you. There used to be a removal of taxes beforehand when you were a W-2 employee. So you didn't have to think much about it. And they got paid, you got a return, and everything was hunky-dory. But then suddenly you're working for yourself, and now you have to set aside such a large portion of your money for estimated taxes for the following year. But it's required. Otherwise, you're going to be hit with what is it, like a 5-10% penalty for estimated taxes, or is it more?
Yeah, I think it's currently about 3.5%.
Okay.
Of the amount over the 90%. Yeah, of the amount that's over 90% that you should have sent in. The biggest shock to most new people that got into business themselves the first time is when I tell them, no, you're going to pay a minimum of 25% of your net profit to the federal government. Well, and that doesn't even include the state government. Okay. And that's because 15.3% of your net goes to your Social Security and your Medicare account. That used to be taken out of your W. And then you start out with a minimum 10% federal tax. It goes to 12 and 22 and 24 up to 30. So you've got that. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you can figure that if you're going to stay a sole proprietor, which is why you need to know the different legal format, you're going to pay 40% of your net profit just in taxes. If you're in a state, probably 50% of your net goes for tax. And that's incredible. That's incredible. And it doesn't have to be that way if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Is there an income threshold where you generally recommend starting off up to this amount, you're okay in this sort of entity, but this is when you really need to consider trying something different or becoming an employee? Again, I don't know. Educate me.
Well, I mean, you can't W-2 yourself if you're a sole proprietor or a partner. Yeah, you just can't. The only people that can W-2 themselves is a corporation. Most people don't want to be a C corporation unless you're like IBM. The other reason you'd want, as a small business person, you'd want to start at the C corporation is if they had the idea that I'm going to take this public. When it takes off, I'm going to take it public and blah, blah, blah. Most small business people will do an S election, which tells the IRS, well, instead of being taxed as a corporation where there's double taxation on dividends, I want to be taxed as an F corporation, which means I'm going to pay my taxes at the local. And then the F corporation is really the only legal format that has some tax savings built into it. Basically, you pay yourself a W-2, whatever and the general thing is 40 to 6% of your net, or what you would pay somebody else to do your job. Okay. You have to W-2 yourself for. Now, the rest of the profit, though, that other 46%, comes down as investment income, and you don't have to pay the 15.3 Social Security Medicare tax on it. That could be a huge savings. I had a client last year that came and saw me. She was a home chef, and phenomenal. First year out, over $100,000 in profit. She had coming in, and that's incredible. She would have owed $8,000 in taxes, but we got her restructured into an F corporation and did some W-2 thing, And we wiped all that out. She got about a couple $1,000 refund instead, when we figured in the husband's W-2 and everything. But that's how important it is to know this stuff. Not only yourself, but make sure the people that you hire know how to do this properly. Well, people say, well, what's the threshold for going to a sole proprietorship to an S corporation? And in that point, I say, well, number one, make sure that your concept is going to work and you're going to be in it for the long haul. All right. If you're just playing around, it costs extra money to be an S corporation. You have to pay the state. And there's different things. You have, for instance, in Florida, you pay $100 a year to be a corporation. In California, you pay $800 a year to be a corporation. Okay. Plus, then you have the cost of doing a separate corporate return instead of in addition to your personal, and that usually runs $500 to $600. Okay. So you have to take all those extra costs that you're going to do and say, okay, if going to a corporation is going to save me at least this much money, then it's worth doing. But if it's going to cost you more to do it than you're going to save by saying a sole proprietorship, then it's not time for you to do that yet. So there's these factors that you have to take into account also.
Yeah, that's so important. And it's just so insightful to kind of hear those specific situations, instances where you were able to save clients money. Because I hear that all the time when anyone who is first getting into business, they're so excited. They're like, I've never made this much money until tax season comes around. And then they hate the IRS and the government. And I feel like 80% of them want to just throw in the towel and give up because they feel like they are giving over their hard-earned money over to an entity that they feel they're not getting as much in return sometimes. And it's like, wow, it's a challenge, and it can be very disheartening for, you as a business owner trying to get the American dream. Now it feels like it's taken away from you. But I feel like that creates that, importance for having someone who can help navigate all the taxes and all those liabilities like that.
Exactly. I remember the first year of doing taxes, I had a gentleman he was an elderly gentleman, and he brought in when the IRS first started implementing our current tax system. He brought in the tax forms for that year for me to see, which was fascinating. It was a 3x5 card. You put your name, your address, your social security number on there, right? And you put how much money that made times 3%, and you just added a check to it and sent it to the government. That was it. That's how simple it was. It was never supposed to be more than that. Well, the government found out, people are just ignoring that and not spending the money in. And that's where they came up with withholding, the W-2 withholding. And that's where that started right there. So that people couldn't cheat anymore. They've gotten so used to it that it's a surprise when you have to do all this yourself. It really is.
Absolutely. Now, the history of taxes, wasn't that just created to pay off some war debts or something, and then it never got taken away? Or does it serve a greater purpose than that?
That's generally what it was. You give politicians money, and they'll always find a way to keep it and take more. They very seldom give it back. But it was supposed to be temporary, but it wasn't. And they based it on one of the amendments that they had the power to do that, but that's still up in the air. A lot of legal scholars will say, well, they never did, but that's not going away. They're not going away. No.
Yeah. And something like you mentioned before, I feel like if we saw that the government was spending our money in a much better fashion and in things that were more important, I feel like we would be more excited to pay taxes and say, wow, I'm finally able to give back. This is going to benefit and help so many people. But then you see we're $34 trillion in debt. It's going to the military industrial complex. It's like, okay, I don't think they're being as wise with their money as we are on our own, but that's how it goes.
Oh, no. If they had to live by the rules we'd really be.
It's so true. Now, having all this kind of foundational business, experience and advice, can that prepare you for future opportunities, whether it's in your own business or your own career?
Yeah, knowing the foundational information is not only good for just your own business, but say, for instance, your buddy comes over and says, I found the best opportunity. I want you to partner with me and go into this. What would you do? Most people have no idea. They shake hands. Oh, yeah, let's go do it. But it's not that simple, because unless you know how you're taxed again. But not only that, from a legal standpoint, you need to sit down and write a partnership agreement. 90% of the people that partnerships that sit in front of me do not have a partnership agreement, especially if it's a husband and wife partnership. Oh my God. And they decide to get divorced. I mean, what a partnership agreement is, I compare it to like a prenuptial. It's what happens if we have to dissolve the partnership. It spells out, or if another person comes into the partnership, we bring another partner in, how do we handle that financially and everything? And it lays all this stuff out, which is one of the things that in my course I give a sample partnership agreement that you can go by. But if you know all these rules and things you have to look for, then you're going to be in a lot better position. If you want to leave the partnership, for instance, spell out your share to somebody else. And it spelled all this stuff out. So there's no arguing, there's no disagreement. Should something go wrong or you want to leave or you bring more people in or you just dissolve it, and it spells it all out. And there's no argument, there's no hard feelings because, hey, this is what we agreed when we opened it, So these are the things you should go. If you're in a management position, say you're on a management track with a company, should you know this? Most people would probably say no. And yet, if you know how business is built and how it works, you will give yourself a better chance of advancement because you will know how that employer's business is supposed to work. And if you see it not working that way, you have your chance to make your voice heard and to give something more to the business than the average employee would give to the business. And that's going to help you in the long run too. So even if you don't have your own business, knowing this information can help you working for somebody else also, because it may give you that opportunity to come along every day. And if you're ready for them, you can grab them and you can run with them. But if you're not educated on all this business stuff, they will pass you by and you wouldn't even know they were there.
Absolutely. Roger, I love the principle and the foundation that you've built and the fact that you want to empower people through education. I think it's a worthwhile topic and interest for you to kind of put your passion and your heart into. It's so important because we don't understand it fully. Where can people go to learn more about the courses and free tools you have, more about you as a person or your business? How can they connect with you?
Well, my main corporate site, which has links to everything, social media and everything, is SeagullTechnologies.com. Seagull is spelled like the bird at the AGULL, which is a whole other story. Technologies.com. But if you would just like to download a free report where I've put all the basics of this in here, if you go to SeagullTechnologies.com/free, it'll take you to a page that you could download a free report that goes into the foundational principles and links to if you want to learn more information from there.
That's fantastic. Roger, thank you so much for taking the time out to share wonderful information with us because it's going to help us become better entrepreneurs. And like you mentioned, if you're on a career path, it could help you become a better manager as well. So Roger, thank you so much for your time. Make sure you follow the podcast, but also check out the links in the description so you can connect and find out more about Roger Pearson here with Seagull Technologies. Roger, thanks so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.